time by Kyrie Chris is 6 p.m. Time for CBX Business News. The business news headlines is brought to you by CBX Wealth Management, making more possible.
Alphabet down 6, Microsoft down 5.
Happy New Month! Hello, welcome to CBX Business News for Monday, June 2, 2025. I'm Yanil Wood. Thanks for joining us. In the local news, UN Senior Advisor warns Jamaica must confront long-term economic impact of COVID-19. Meanwhile, Jamaica's productivity performance shows a downward trend, says UN Economic Advisor. And JMEA partners with Sagicor Group to launch tailored health plan for Jamaican manufacturers. In regional business news, Bahamas sees slower economic growth in Q1 of 2025. However, investment and credit expansion remain strong. Barbados charts course to become a full member of CAF, and Cable and Wireless Communications rebrands as Liberty Caribbean, ushering in a new era of connectivity. And in international business news, Trump accuses China of breaching recent trade agreement, reigniting tensions. Meanwhile, UK mortgage lending plunges in April, consumer credit surges. And crude oil jumps over 3% after OPEC Plus maintains output strategy. Stay with us. The news in detail right after this break.
Alphabet down 6, Microsoft down 5.
Wealth is not simply counted in dollars or cents, but in the time we spend with love, in love, giving love. Wealth is not simply a means to an end. It is the means to live out loud. Wealth is more than money. It's about family, the memories you create, the legacy you leave behind, and your ability to enjoy life in the moment. It's also about seeing the QMAX possibilities and seizing investment opportunities to achieve the future you want and deserve. Which is why QMAX Wealth will focus on your investments so you can experience more. Because true wealth is truly more. To start investing today, call 876-926-7767.
Hurricane safety tips from CBX. Please ensure your safety during the hurricane season by diligently following these tips. Store a 4 to 5 day supply of non-perishable ready-to-eat food. Ensure you have materials for securing doors and windows. See that galvanized sheeting on your roofs, outbuildings, and fences are securely fastened. Trim trees with branches near to the buildings or electrical lines. Keep a hurricane lamp burning as it may make the night more tolerable. Listen to the radio for information on what's happening. Be sure to understand the hurricane warning system. Have on hand simple first aid supplies. Keep plastic bags, nails, hammer, and other tools handy. Do not go outside unless it's absolutely necessary. These are hurricane tips from CBX. Be safe.
The local news is brought to you by Darriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean flavors and fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments.
Alphabet down 6, Microsoft down 5.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. And now, the details. United Nations Development Counselor and Senior Economic Advisor Stuart Davis says Jamaica must address a legacy impact from the COVID-19 pandemic, which still exists. Davies made the remarks last Thursday at the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association JMEA Manufacture 360-degree conference held at the AC Hotel in Kingston. This perspective contrasts with an earlier forecast from the Planning Institute of Jamaica, PIOJ. In February 2023, the PIOJ predicted that Jamaican economy would return to pre-pandemic levels by fiscal year 2022-2023, 1 year ahead of previous expectations. During the same period, PIOJ Director General Dr. Wayne Henry also noted that the country was on track for a full economic recovery sooner than anticipated. However, 2 years down the road, Davies says despite signs of recovery, the pandemic's lingering effects continue to challenge Jamaica's economic progress. He also warns that the country's gross domestic product GDP per capita should be dealt with in the coming years to ensure sustainable economic growth.
What we're seeing is that even though we're 4 or 5 years on from the COVID crisis, and we're seeing that forecasters now have a more certain perspective of where the Jamaican economy is heading, there's still a legacy impact from COVID that Jamaica needs to address in the coming years. We know that there was a huge shock to wealth, and we're seeing in terms of, so this chart with the 2 lines on it is showing what the IMF projections were before COVID. So the purple line shows where the Jamaican economy was expected to head before the COVID pandemic affected globally. And the blue line are the most recent IMF projections for that were announced at the spring meetings this year. And what we're seeing is that, you know, there was a reduction in GDP per capita, real GDP per capita, that hasn't quite been recouped yet.
He also urged Jamaican manufacturers to play their part in building the economy and taking the country onto a new path of prosperity.
Part of the role and responsibility lies within this room in terms of increasing productivity, investing, and taking Jamaica to a new path of prosperity going forward, so that that gap can be squeezed and that Jamaica can get back onto a path that it enjoyed pre-COVID.
Referencing business challenges in Jamaica and the upcoming World Bank Be Ready assessment, the UN Senior Economic Advisor has this to say to Jamaican manufacturers.
How do you see some of these obstacles and constraints developing over recent years? For instance, in terms of enforcing contracts, trading across borders, paying taxes, those where Jamaica was assessed as not ranking as highly, how have they progressed over the recent years? We would love to know, and we would love to see progress in those areas to provide a more enriching, enabling environment for business to flourish.
And Jamaica's long-standing struggle with low productivity remains a serious obstacle to economic growth, and the situation may be even more unstable than previously thought. Addressing stakeholders at the recently staged JMEA 360-degree conference, Mr. Davies described Jamaica's productivity challenge as volatile, noting that fluctuations in labor productivity and overall output continue to undermine national development goals. In response, the United Nations is partnering with the University of the West Indies, UWI, to examine the underlying causes and explore strategies to reverse the current trajectory.
We are grappling with, and we're working very closely with the University of West Indies in looking at the productivity challenge within Jamaica. As these charts show, the productivity challenge has been declining over recent decades. So it's quite volatile, and the dotted lines are essentially 10-year averages of total factor productivity, so the productivity of all factors of production and labor productivity in particular. And what we're seeing is that decreasing trend. And one of the challenges that we're focused on in the UN at the moment is trying to understand that, unpack it, and and visualize through our programs how we might be able to support a reversal in those fortunes.
He notes that while the country's productivity is trending positively, it still lacks the necessary diversity.
If we unpack this, next slide, please. What we see when we characterize, and this is in very general terms, when we characterize productivity, what we see is that Jamaica's production, although on a positive trend, is still not as sophisticated, not as, it's too ubiquitous, not as diverse as it needs to be able to then compete going forward. So the sophistication of products produced in Jamaica, despite its enormously beneficial branding, are not providing the value added currently that Jamaican products deserve and to fulfill their potential. What we're seeing is, particularly on diversification, is moving in the right direction, but we're not generating enough income streams to be able to increase prosperity, income, and raise that GDP per capita to where it should be.
The UN Senior Economic Advisor also reported a decline in Jamaica's innovation.
Innovation has been declining, and that we need to be thinking about new innovative solutions in business to be able to reverse that process. The other lines are just components of innovation, but the general trend has been, unfortunately, downward. Similarly, when we think of, well, what are the foundations of productivity? We see those in the UN, and UNCTAD produced this index called productive capacities. We see that productive capacities have remained quite level over recent years. And by investing in these productive capacities, we're able to increase innovation, we're able to increase the value added of products by increasing their sophistication, and through that, increase productivity and obviously growth.
Development Council and Senior Economic Advisor to the United Nations, Stuart Davies. The Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, JMEA, has taken a significant step toward enhancing healthcare access for its members through a strategic partnership with Sagicor Group Jamaica. In February 2025, the two entities signed a Memorandum of Understanding MOU establishing the JMEA Care Health Plan. Speaking at last week's JMEA Manufacture 360 Degrees Conference, Assistant Vice President of Pensions Investments at Sagicor Group, Neil Kellyman, told CBX News that the health plan specifically targets JMEA members who are not currently covered by any existing health insurance schemes.
The JMEA health plan was a major part of the MOU. What it is, we are going to provide health care to all JMEA members who are not covered under health plan, who probably are too small and not eligible to be covered under health plan. So that's a big part of the MOU. So we are going out there, advertising, going to recruit people to make sure that they join up with the JMEA health care.
Mr. Kellerman also outlined the different rates for the various life and health plans that Sagicor will be offering under this initiative.
Below $5,000 per month for the health plan, as I said, per month. For the life plan, $2,600 per annum, as cheap as that. So the rates are pretty good. And as I said, we are looking out for the members of the JMEA to ensure that everybody is covered under a health plan. So it's group life, group health. You can also add critical illness to that suite of benefits.
Assistant Vice President of Pensions Investments at Sagicor Group, Neil Kellyman. Now to foreign currency trading news. In Monday's trading session, the US dollar is selling for $160.10, the Canadian for $117.36, and the pound sterling for $215.67. The euro will go for $184.32. And from foreign currency trading news, we go to trading news on the JSE. 114 stocks traded on the JSE Monday, of which 37 advanced, 48 declined, and 29 traded firm. 138 Student Living Jamaica Variable Preference, Jamaica Public Service 7%, G West Corporation Ordinary Shares, and CAC 2000 led the winners, while the losers were led by JFP Limited, Consolidated Bakeries Jamaica, First Rock Real Estate Investments US dollar, and Epley Caribbean Property Fund SCC. Now the main index declined by 351.59 points, or 0.11%, to close at 324,480.03. The junior market index also declined, but by 18.94, or 0.54%, to close at 3,504.16. Now to some company news. Dolphin Cove has declared an interim dividend of 60 cents per share payable on June 27 this year to shareholders on record as at June 13, which is also the ex-dividend date. The company has also advised that in pursuance of Article 95H of the Articles of Incorporation of Dolphin Cove Limited, the office of director held by Stafford Burrows was vacated effective May 30, 2025. And it's time for Market Education Feature, brought to you by Carrie Chris, Regional Ratings, Global. In today's Market Education Feature, we're taking a closer look at the term Six Sigma. Six Sigma is a methodology that combines a variety of tools and techniques designed to improve business processes. Developed in 1986 by engineer Bill Smith at Motorola, the approach centers on using statistical analysis, financial evaluation, and project management to identify and eliminate defects, reduce variability, and ultimately enhance quality and efficiency. At the heart of Six Sigma is a five-step process known by the acronym DMAIC, which stands for Define, Measure, Analyze, Improve, and Control. These phases guide organizations in systematically improving their operations and delivering better results. The Market Education Feature was brought to you by Caricris, Regional Ratings, Global Standards. Quite interesting. That's it for Market Education Feature and the end of the local segment. Please stay with us. The regional business news is up next.
Alphabet down 6, Microsoft down 5.
The local news is brought to you by Derriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances, Tease the Senses, and Pulse Investments.
Introducing the Corporate Services Unit, your go-to experts for corporate secretarial solutions. We offer statutory compliance, efficient minute taking, registered office address services, management of board and members meetings, setup and maintenance of corporate registers. Stay ahead with our proactive approach to new regulations. We operate under the Trust and Corporate Service Provider, licensed to the JCSD Trustee Services Limited. We're here to simplify your corporate journey, no matter the size of your company. Contact the Corporate Service Unit today and let's streamline your compliance journey together, because your success is our business.
is not simply counted in dollars or cents, but in the time we spend with love, in love, giving love. Wealth is not simply a means to an end. It is the means to live out loud. Wealth is more than money. It's about family, the memories you create, the legacy you leave behind, and your ability to enjoy life in the moment. It's also about seeing the QMAX possibilities and seizing investment opportunities to achieve the future you want and deserve. Which is why QMAX Wealth will focus on your investments so you can experience more. Because true wealth is truly more. To start investing today, call 876-926-7767.
Alphabet down 6, Microsoft down 5.
Welcome back. We go now to news from across the region. Governor of the Central Bank of the Bahamas, John Roll, has revealed that the Bahamian economy expanded at a slower pace in the first quarter of 2025 when compared to the corresponding period last year. According to Governor Roll, this declaration moves the economy closer to its medium-term growth potential. He made the remarks during the bank's quarterly economic developments media briefing held recently.
Preliminary indications are that the Bahamian economy expanded at a slower pace in the first quarter of 2025 compared to the same quarter of 2024, moving closer to its expected medium-term potential, but tempered by capacity constraints in stopover tourism. The economy continued to attract healthy foreign investment inflows, providing a corresponding boost to construction and related employment. In the latest estimates, average retail price inflation moderated significantly because of reduced cost pressures on imported goods and services and savings on electricity costs. In line with moderated net private sector inflows and in the absence of net foreign currency borrowings by the public sector, seasonal growth in bank liquidity and external reserves tapered when compared to the same period in 2024.
However, the central bank governor also pointed to improvements in the credit market, with private sector borrowing gaining momentum and delinquency rates on the decline.
Credit expanded at a faster pace, and credit delinquencies declined further compared to 2024. As regard to tourism, the constrained hotel sector capacity underpinned slower quarterly earnings potential than in 2024. In the latest available data, total air arrivals to the Bahamas contracted based on both overall indicators through February and estimated departures through the Nassau International Airport through March. Reduced air traffic is estimated to have impeded hotel sector performance most, as vacation rental sales, which are an important segment of the stopover market, experienced further expansion, and such activities attracted incrementally appreciated average daily rental.
Governor of the Central Bank of the Bahamas, John Roll. Barbados is moving to strengthen its access to climate resilience funding by taking steps to become a full member of the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean, CAF. Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Ryan Strawn, announced during a recent post-cabinet press conference that cabinet has approved the country's transition from a lower-tier shareholder to full membership in the Multilateral Development Bank. Barbados has been affiliated with CAF for the past 11 years, but full membership will unlock wider financing and technical support opportunities.
With that, we'll be able to become a full member of CAF, which is one of the most responsive as well as flexible multilateral development banks in the hemisphere. And therefore, as we mark just about 11 years of membership of CAF, we feel that the time is right to be able to ensure that as we start to accelerate our climate resilience building in the country, that we are able to not just unlock financing for public sector projects, but equally that the entire country be able to access resources from CAF in order to ensure that both the public sector as well as the private sector in particular, that we're able to strategically invest in the future for Barbados.
In other news, in a significant move marking more than 150 years of operation in the region, Cable and Wireless Communications Limited, which operates as C&W Communications, has officially rebranded as Liberty Caribbean. The rebrand aligns the company more closely with its parent entity, Liberty Latin America. As part of this transformation, the company's enterprise arm, formerly known as C&W Business, will now operate under the name Liberty Business, reflecting a unified innovation-driven approach to digital solutions across the Caribbean. Chief Executive Officer of Liberty Caribbean, Inga Smits, expressed optimism about the company's new direction, saying for well over a century, the company has been a vital link across the Caribbean, from the first undersea telegraph cables in the 19th century to today's high-speed broadband mobile and enterprise solutions. As Liberty Caribbean, we embark on our next chapter with excitement and determination, unwavering in our mission to bring people together and enrich lives. Meanwhile, CEO of Liberty Latin America, Balan Nair, also underscored the strategic importance of the move. He says by uniting under the Liberty Caribbean banner, we reinforce our century-long promise to harness connectivity as a force for economic growth, enhanced public services, and social impact. Despite the rebranding, customers can expect business as usual. Existing consumer brands, Flow and BTC, will continue operating under their current names, with no changes to service agreements, support channels, or points of contact. Now to trading news from the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. 19 securities traded on the TTSE Monday, of which 9 advanced, 4 declined, and 6 traded firm. Leading the winners were LJ Williams, JMMB Group, Trinidad and Tobago NGL, and Trinidad Cement, while the losers were led by National Flour Mills, First Citizens Group Financial Holdings, Massey Holdings, and Ansa McCall. Other results of the day include the All-TNT Index declining by 4.52 to close at 1,531.39. The Composite Index declining by 0.90 to close at 1,045.73. However, the Cross-Listed Index advanced by 0.42 to close at 73.63, and still remaining at 91.76 is the SME Index. Now to some company news. Trinidad Cement Limited, TCL, has announced the final dividend of 12 cents per share. The ex-dividend date is set for August 26, meaning shareholders must own shares before this date to be eligible. The record date is August 27, with the dividend payable on September 23 this year. Meanwhile, Calypso Macro Index Fund declared an interim dividend of 18 cents per share. The ex-dividend date is June 11, the record date is June 12, and the payment will be made on July 7. And that's a wrap for today's update from the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. We go for a short break. Please stay with us. The international news segment with Nielsen Rose is up next.
Alphabet down 6, Microsoft down 5.
Your garden coming along well.
Thanks, man. You know, it's a long time I've been working at it.
I can see that. I saw you mail by the gate, so I'll pick it up for you. But tell me something. Why are you still receiving dividend checks by mail?
What do you mean about that?
You need to give JCSD a mandate.
You know, me hear about the mandate them. I'm going over there right now.
A mandate means giving instructions to the Jamaica Central Securities Depository Limited, JCSD, relating to the handling of your dividend or interest payment. There are 3 types of mandates. The first is a bank mandate. The second is a hold mandate. Lastly, we have what we call a third-party mandate, with which the investor may wish to send their dividend or interest to someone other than the parties on their account or institution of their choice.
Alphabet down 6, Microsoft down 5.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. In the international news today, trade tensions between the United States and China have reignited after US President Donald Trump accused Beijing of totally violating a recently signed trade agreement. The accusation, made via social media, referred to a 90-day tariff truce agreed upon in May that had temporarily eased trade barriers and lifted market sentiment. Trump's comments came shortly after U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent acknowledged that trade negotiations with China had stalled. In a further escalation, Trump announced plans to double tariffs on steel and aluminum imports to 50% effective June 4, a move that drew swift criticism from global trade partners. China swiftly rejected the allegations, accusing the U.S. of breaching the agreement first. Beijing pointed to recent American actions, including new restrictions on AI chip exports, limitations on chip design software, and threats to revoke China's student visas as violations that severely undermined the spirit of the deal. The Chinese Ministry of Commerce condemned the U.S. stance, warning of firm retaliation if what is called discriminatory measures continued. China also dismissed Trump's claims regarding a separate trade agreement reached in Geneva last month, casting doubt on the likelihood of a near-term call between Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping. Despite the rising tensions, National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett suggested a conversation between the two leaders could still take place as early as this week. The renewed friction has raised concerns about potential re-escalation of the trade war, which had previously disrupted global markets and strained supply chains worldwide. UK mortgage lending saw a dramatic reversal in April, with net borrowing falling by £13.7 billion to £0.8 billion, marking the first decline since January 2024 and significantly below market expectations of a £0.5 billion drop. This sharp downturn follows a surge in March when net borrowing rose by $9.7 billion to $13 billion. Gross mortgage lending also plummeted to $16.9 billion in April from $39.9 in March, the steepest monthly fall since June 2021. Meanwhile, gross repayments declined $18.8 billion from $23.7. The annual growth rate for net mortgage lending eased to 2.5% from 2.7%, reflecting a cooling housing market amid high interest rates and affordability pressures. In contrast, consumer credit continued to climb. Net borrowing rose to $1.58 billion in April, up from a revised $1.102 billion in March and exceeding forecasts of $1.1 billion. Credit card borrowing doubled to $0.8 billion, while other forms of consumer credit, including personal loans and car financing, edged up to $0.8 billion. The annual growth rate for total consumer credit accelerated to 6.7% in April, up from 6.2% in March. Credit card borrowing led the surge, with an annual growth rising to 9.8%, while other consumer credit grew at a steady 5.3%. The figures highlight a growing divergence in household borrowing behavior, with consumers increasingly relying on a short-term credit to manage everyday expenses, even as housing market shows signs of strain. Crude oil prices surged on Monday with WTI crude futures climbing above 3% to approximately $62.70 per barrel, and Brent crude rising more than 2% to around $64.50. The rally followed OPEC Plus' decision to maintain its current pace of output increases, easing market fears of a larger supply boost. At a meeting on Saturday, the Oil Producing Alliance agreed to raise output by 411,000 barrels per day in July, the same increment as in the previous 2 months. The move signals a strategic effort to stabilize prices while reining in overproduction by members such as Iraq and Kazakhstan. It also positions key producers like Saudi Arabia and Russia to regain market share. Adding to the bullish sentiment are escalating geopolitical tensions. Ukraine launched drone strikes on 4 Russian military fields, reportedly destroying over 40 warplanes. In retaliation, Russia intensified its missile and drone attacks on Ukrainian targets. These developments come ahead of a second round of peace talks scheduled to take place in Istanbul later today. The combination of disciplined supply management and heightened geopolitical risks is providing strong support for oil prices as markets weigh the outlook for global energy demand. Costco Wholesale delivered a mixed second quarter performance, reporting strong revenue growth but narrowly missing earnings expectations, prompting a sharp market reaction. The retail giant posted earnings per share (EPS) of $4.02, slightly below the forecasted $4.11, while revenues climbed 9% year-over-year to $63.72 billion, surpassing analyst estimates. Comparable store sales rose 6.8%, beating projections of 6.4%, with Canadian operation performing particularly well when adjusted for fuel and currency fluctuations. Membership fee income also increased, supported by a recent fee hike. Despite these positive, Costco's stock fell over 7% following the earnings release as investors weighed the modest earnings miss against the company's rich valuation. The stock is currently trading at $1,040.18, just below its 52-week high of $1,078.23 and well above its 52-week low of $793, with a book value per share of $57.64. Costco's price-to-book ratio stands at a lofty 18.05 times, underscoring concerns that the stock may be priced for perfection. Analysts remain broadly optimistic about Costco's long-term outlook, citing brand loyalty, resilient consumer demand, and operation agility. However, caution that the high valuation leaves little room for future missteps. And those were your international business stories. After the break, join Neil for your recap.
Alphabet down 6, Microsoft down 5.
Hi, I'm Nielsen Rose, host of Let's Talk Stocks, reminding you that health is indeed wealth and time is really money. Why not spend a little time with us? Weekday mornings, 9 to 9:30 a.m. for your daily dose of business, economic, and investment insights.
Alphabet down 6, Microsoft down 5.
Welcome back. And now, the recap. UN advisor urges Jamaica to address COVID-19's long-term economic impact. And JMEA and Sagicor Group launch health plan for manufacturers. In regional business news, Bahamas sees slower economic growth in Q1 of 2025, and CNW Communications rebrands as Liberty Caribbean. And internationally, Trump accuses China of breaching recent trade agreement, and UK mortgage lending plunges in April. Those were the stories making today's CBX Evening News. On behalf of Nielsen Rose and the entire production team, I'm Yanil Wood, wishing for you a peaceful evening, and thanks for joining us.
Alphabet down 6, Microsoft down 5.
Good day, my name is Dirk-Jan de Graaf, CEO of the Dutch Caribbean Securities Exchange, and I'm very happy to be here to tell you something more about our exchange, about Curaçao background, and about the views for the period to come.